Hi, Sherry. Let me give you a critique on these two images, like I said we would do. And let's see, we have this one, and then we have the second image that's titled Corpus Boat, which I'm assuming this is an image shot in Corpus Christi. So let's go ahead and take the first one, Normandy Beach. And of course, I think what you were going for here, if I'm looking at this correctly, would be, the military cannon, a very serious piece of hardware against a merry-go-round, which is a very fun piece of hardware. And I think you're trying to set up the contrast between the two moods. And you did a very good job from a composition standpoint on this. And also, I think that you mentioned in your email that you replaced the sky, and I have to say you did a real good job on replacing that sky given the intricacy of the border between the merry-go-round and the sky and the other areas of the image. Kudos to you for that. I would, however, direct your attention to the right side of the image over here. Let me get the pointer so I can do this right. This area right here is just a bit dark in terms of the border with the sky. I would darken this area just a bit to make it look a bit more natural. But other than that, that's a very nitpick comment. You did a real good job on replacing the sky. I have to say the depth of field is very, very good too. You have got good, sharp detail right here, and of course, good, sharp detail in the background, and of course, in the sky. So let's take a look. Now, in terms of ways to improve this image, I think the first thing that jumps out at me is that it's just a little bit crooked. So let's go ahead and correct that. Let's go ahead and click on the crop tool, and we'll come up and get this little area right here called straighten, and then come down, and the straight part of the merry-go-round or carousel, whatever you want to call it, is right here. And if we just draw a line straight down a straight edge on the image and let go, it automatically aligns it. We can refine that by coming down here in the corner, click, and then just kind of rotate a little bit. And I'm going to refine that ever so slightly. I'm going to hit the return button to go ahead and accept that crop, and I think that looks a lot better. Now, one of the other things I would do with this image is maybe add a bit more contrast, and at least in Photoshop, go ahead and click on Image, Adjustments, Curves. I'm going to do this increase in contrast with the Curves dialog box. I'd recommend that you not do contrast with the contrast slider. You lose a lot of control when you do that, and you can get a much, much better result if you always adjust your contrast with the curves slider. And of course, this is available to you in Lightroom as well. So we come down to the lower left-hand corner here, left click, hold it down, and just drag this over, and you can see the contrast beginning to pop up here. And I think that right there is going to do it. Now, we also need just a little bit more saturation here. Now, saturation is a subject we could spend a lot of time on, but let me show you two ways to adjust saturation, and that would be the vibrance slider. And what I usually do on every image is boost the vibrance up to about 50. And I think you can see the result there. It's a bit subtle. And what the vibrance slider does is that it boosts the lesser saturated colors in an image. It doesn't boost everything equally like the saturation slider does, but it boosts the lesser saturated tones upward. And then, of course, if we take saturation, it boosts the saturation on every level of tonality equally. So let's go ahead and boost that just a little bit, and keep going until we like it. And I think that's just about got it right there. You really have to punch these sliders whenever you have an overcast day, whenever you have a situation where the colors are a bit muted, which is always the case on an overcast day. So let's go ahead and hit OK. Now what I'm going to do is something maybe just a little bit more involved. I'm going to duplicate the layers. Now you can't do this in Lightroom because Lightroom does not have layers. So let's go ahead and hit the Command button and hold it down, and then hit J. And hit J again, and that duplicates our layer twice. And we'll come over and choose the middle layer, disconnect the top layer. Now, a lot of people use adjustment layers for this kind of process, but adjustment layers came in after I started using Photoshop about 15, 20 years ago, so I just always done it this way. 6 1/2 dozen of the other. There's no one way to do anything in Photoshop or Lightroom, but this is just the way I do things. I think maybe if we bring out a bit more drama in the sky, it might add to the image. So I'm going to come up to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. I'm going to invoke Adobe Camera Raw. Now, I usually don't use Adobe Camera Raw to do my conversions from RAW to TIFF. I only use it as a filter within Photoshop. And I'll come down here to the clarity slider and go ahead and punch that to the right, and you can see the immediate effect that it's having on the sky. And I like that result. Now, the other slider that I would test, at least try it out, is this dehaze. The only way to describe the dehaze is go ahead and use it and let you look at it. What it does is actually just darkens the dark areas of the image very, very quickly. But I don't like that result. I'm going to go ahead and stick with the clarity slider and go ahead and hit OK. Now, my thinking in doing 2 copy layers here was that I would just take a look at how the result would be in the sky and also on the rest of the image. But I got to say, after having done it, this is before and this is after, I think it really adds to the entire image. And so what I'm going to do, let me go ahead and get rid of this. This is my internet connection, and things are going to pop up on here that I don't want to pop up. So, all right, so we'll go back to the layer stack, and if we take the middle layer, then we would choose the top layer, activate it, put a mask on, and then come get the brush, and then I would just brush in. I'm going to go ahead and adjust this flow setting up to 100. Go ahead and brush in the sky, and I think the Canon also benefits from the adjustment. And go ahead and just bring these in. See how it gives a kind of a gritty look to the Canon, which doesn't take anything away from it at all. And yet we leave the carousel kind of not quite as contrasty and gritty as the gun, and I think it really adds to the image. Now let's go ahead and collapse this. Now let me show you what I mean when I say pay attention to this area over here. Let me go ahead and get the move tool. In this area right here, we're going to do a little bit of work on. Not a whole lot, because this is just a demonstration. Let's go ahead and hit it. Command J twice. Choose the middle layer. I'm going to mute the top layer, and then I'm going to adjust this area right here. So let's come up to Image, Adjustments, Curves, and just pull this down. And I'm only looking at this area right here. I don't care what it does to the rest of the image. Okay, so I'm going to pull this down some more. Go ahead and hit OK. Activate the top layer. Go get a mask. Come get the paintbrush tool. And now I'm going to reduce the flow down to about 6% is plenty. So let's go ahead and reduce the size of the brush with the left bracket key. And then let's just paint this in. And just make that transition just a little bit better. And we can darken the person here. That's not going to hurt anything. And we go ahead and I think that just helps ever so slightly. Now you can refine this by going to 100% visibility and come in here with a small brush and really nail down this transition, which is what I'm doing right here. And I think that does look just a little bit better. But I have to say you did an excellent job on replacing that sky. So I'm going to go ahead and call this a finished shot. I think it looks better. Let's go ahead and look at before and after. And here we are before. And here we are after. So from a composition standpoint, exposure standpoint, focus standpoint, you did everything right. And I think if you just add a little bit to the processing, it really improves this image. Let's now go to the boat shot. And I have to say, this is the best one of the two by far, I think. You did everything right here. I can't fault you on any aspect of this shot. It's perfectly exposed, perfectly composed. You got it level. You got it focused, and I think you did a superb job here. One of the things that I notice is that the lines in this image, let me get the move tool, you got the horizon straight, you've got the dock, you've got this little rock situation going here. Now this one is a little bit sloped, but the basic shape of this is straight across. So you have the lines in this image all perfect. This little area right here in the water is coming across. You got a dock, you got another little walkway here. You've got the bridge of the boat right here. You got the flying bridge up here. The horizon even the clouds. I mean, everything is just, the lines in this image are really what make it pop. Let's add some contrast, and I'm going to do that. We want to separate our treatment of the sky with the foreground. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Command-J twice. I'm going to hit the middle layer, deactivate the top layer, and again, we're going to come in and go Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and we're going to invoke the clarity slider. So let's just take a look and see what that looks like. Now, my personal reaction to this is that I like it just a little bit gritty. Not slamming it all the way over like that. I think that's too much, but just a little bit to give it a little bit more contrast right here. So let's go ahead and accept that adjustment. Now we're going to come up to Image, Adjustments, Vibrance, and again, boost the saturation. We'll start with the Vibrance slider and take it all the way up to 50. And that doesn't do a whole lot, so we'll just kick it up to 60, and then we'll come get the saturation and boost the saturation. Now, again, as I mentioned, we want to separate our treatment of the sky with the foreground. So at this point, I'm only looking at the water and the boat and the fishermen and the rocks. I'm not caring about what it's doing to the sky. So let's go ahead and bump this saturation up just a bit. Hit OK. And I think it is just a bit dark, so I'm going to come into the Image, Adjustments, Curves, and then in looking, again, only at the foreground here, I'm going to go ahead and boost this up here and give that area just a bit more light. And call it even right there. Then we're going to invoke the top layer, come get our mask, get the paintbrush tool, and this time we can go real big on the brush. And I'm going to change this flow adjustment up to 100% and then just bring this in. See how that goes? Just like that. And I think it makes the image pop just a bit. Your white balance is perfect too, I didn't mention. This is a super, super image. So let's go ahead and bring in that foreground just like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to collapse these layers, flatten layer, and then establish another set of copy layers. Command-J, Command-J, again, choose the middle layer, disconnect the top layer. Now we're going to work on the sky. So let's go ahead, go to Image, Adjustments, Curves, and let's bring the brightness of the sky down just a little bit. That helps to saturate the colors. And then we'll come up to Image, Adjustments, Vibrance, and we're going to boost the saturation of those colors just a bit. Let's take it all the way up to 50. Now we don't want to adjust the saturation, if at all, because if we do that, see, that's too much. That's way yonder too much. And I see so many images where people did that and it just isn't real. So we're going to bring this saturation slider back down to about maybe 9, hit OK. Now let's try some experiments and see what we can do with the white balance. We come up to Image, Adjustments, Curves, and we'll take this middle eyedropper here and just click on the sky right there, and we're going to warm that up quite a bit. So let's go ahead and hit OK. I like that result. So let's come in, establish our mask, get the paintbrush, and flow and opacity up here are at 100%. So let's go ahead and just bring this in, and look how that image changes. See how it warms up the sky quite a bit right there? I think that looks much, much better. Now we can refine the border between the sky and the water by coming in, reduce the size of the brush, change the color from black to white, and then we're going to paint in this area right here because it bled over quite a bit, and we don't want that. We do not want that. So there, that's got it. Now these little areas right here, I don't know what this is. And then you've got some, I'm assuming there's a net or something that's hanging right over here that causes this area to go green, so I'll just leave that alone. I'm assuming there's something here. Let me show you what I would do. We're going to go ahead and get the clone stamp tool, and we'll go ahead and sample this area right here. No, let's sample Well, first thing we need to do is flatten the image before we do that. And I think that looks really good. But let's go ahead and get rid of these little artifacts over here. All right. We click right there and then come up. And that one's gone. Now let's get rid of this one. It's going to be a bit more difficult, so I'm going to come to the side, click on it, and then just go like that. And then I'll sample here, come over, and line those two lines up right there, and then click on that. And we've got it. And I think that's a finished image. Now it also, this is purely to taste, but if you want to get rid of these two telephone poles, whatever they are, I don't know what those are, but you might want to get rid of those. Let's go ahead and just do that to show you how it works. Go ahead and sample from here. We'll come over and then just come straight up. Now we'll sample again right there. And those are gone. Now let's get this little area right here. Just like that. And we are done. And that's how you do that. Now, the other little thing you might do, and again, this is just nitpick to the nth degree. Come up to Filter, Lens Correction, and we're going to put a vignette in there. And this is just playing around, experimentation to see if it looks decent. It might not, so if it doesn't, then we'll just back off of it. But I think what I want to do is focus a little more attention on these fishermen sitting here. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll get the mask for the top layer, come get the paintbrush, and then we'll just come up and get it real big and then just click on it. Okay, now that looks a little weird, so what we're going to do is come up to opacity, and we're going to bring down the impact of that vignette, and boom, I think we're just focusing a little more attention on the fisherman sitting on the dock. Go ahead and flatten the image, and boom, we're done. Now, again, this is another little bit nitpick, but let's take a look and just experiment with the clarity slider and see how it's going to look on the sky. We'll come up to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and again, this is experimentation. Move the clarity slider over. Ooh, yeah, I like that. Yeah, the sky looks real good. Okay, let's go ahead and keep that. Go ahead and hit OK. Go get the top layer, reactivate it, establish a mask. And you see that I've done this several times exactly the same way. So that clarity slider and having layers is a real benefit whenever you're trying to process an image. All right, and we'll flatten it because everything looks good. Maybe just a tiny overall boost of exposure. Let's bring this up just like that and call it even. So there we have the Normandy cannon against the carousel, and then we have the fishing boat at Corpus Christi, and I really like this shot. You did a good job. Now, there is some noise up here I'm noticing. I don't know what your ISO was when you shot this, but I am noticing some noise. It's not a big deal, but it's something you might want to pay attention to in the future. So, there you go. This is just what I would do on these images. If you ask 10 people, you might get 10 different opinions. So, I hope this helps.